Hey, I'm Ben Bapti and I'm here with Mixers with the Masters at Rue Boyer in Paris. Today I'm going to talk about the Little Simz track Gorilla that was produced by Inflo. We actually mixed it in this room at Rue Boyer. The whole album was mixed in this room over a weekend. It's a very quick process. We also did a lot of tracking as well, which I'll go through today. I mean, the whole track is based around a very kind of simple loop sample, which we actually ended up redoing. So I'll go through the tracking of that, the way I processed it, then fitting it into the track with Simz's vocal. As well as that, there's a lot of orchestral stuff on there, which I'll go through the tracking of that, which was done at Abbey Road in London, and then my mixing process over the whole thing. The way that the track actually started, the whole process of the track was Simz and Inflo writing, and they had this sample that they were working with. As we kind of got further down the record making process, obviously it became clear that the sample needed to be redone. And just working out kind of the best way to do that, which we ended up redoing in Paris. We got Chris Daddy Dave on drums, and then we had Inflo playing bass, and we also used a double bass player on an orchestral session we were doing. The original sample, which I can play, is this here, which is a pretty classic old sample jazz record with Simz's vocal, which has a very specific kind of like feel and context that's created very quickly. And the main thing was, when realizing that we couldn't use that sample, was how were we gonna keep that feel, keep that groove. The sample ended up sounding like this.
Simma, who got the keys to my blood clot bimmer, big time driller, monkey to gorilla. Who is this woman that I'm seeing in the mirror? Drink 42 and smoke.
And so the whole track actually becomes based around this mono sample. If I flip between that being in and out of the track against the original sample and the new sample.
What's happening? Ooh,
this is the current sample that was used, and this is the original one.
How we came up, cool. Trying to get to the paper, hit it from Jamaica, might do me a favor, true. Big simmer, dipping 10.
Both have their like very set qualities, but this is where kind of it was really, really great working with Inflo on this, where he started feeling like, okay, how can we actually use the redo as a positive thing for Simz's voice, and how can we kind of lean into her kind of flow and style and actually show that off. And so it became more about like the backbeat of the song with the snare hitting harder. So you really get the whack of the snare, whereas against the original, it's much more about the hat and like the kind of like kick, so you haven't got so much of the backbeat. So as we were going through into this, it was to get that real thwack of the snare. We actually so we recorded the drums for this in Paris with Chris Dave. What I'll go through is basically I'll take all of the processing off that I do on the sample, and this is just the original drums recording. I mean, as you can see, even though it's Chris Dave, who's obviously a great drummer, we had to really time and then loop up to get this really specific groove that was, you know, really important to keep consistent against the original, to keep that feel of the song. Within this recording, you know, we were using, you can see in the tracks here, I've got like a 67, 47, both muted, so it was just kick and snare, an overhead Coles, a room mic. Let me just play the room mic, which is a really tight room sound. That was a M49. And then I was also sending the 47 here. I was actually sending that mic, I was paralleling it out to an old Grampian spring, which you get a lot of like pull and drive from that. So this is the whole drum recording as we had it. To then really start to kind of shape it into the sound that we wanted for the sample redo, we needed all the other elements. I mean, I think with a lot of, when you're redoing a sample, it's really, really important to, it's not only just the playing that you're really kind of trying to replicate, you're trying to replicate that feel of that original context of the record that you're taking it from. So it's not just about getting the notes right. It's like you've got to get the interaction of all of the instruments to be right as well. And at the end of the day, it's like when you're taking a sample from somewhere, you're probably getting a mixed, mastered on a record, probably an MP3. You know, it's like there's so many different iterations that you're going through. So as much as you would want to get that just in the basic recording, it's going to be really difficult to, because you're actually against something that's a fully kind of realized record, and you're also pulling a very specific time from that record. So it's going to have a life of its own. So before we could really finesse anything, we needed to get everything else. So we were breaking down, as you can see here, these are the other tracks for the sample redo. As well as that, we had a double bass player come in. And again, it's edited like crazy. You know, we just had to really go in micro on every single kind of hit. So with the drums, you start to get like a bit more of that groove that we were needing. And as much as on like first listen, that could probably feel right, when you're going in on a loop that's repeating for the whole song, you really need to go in on absolute micro details. So as we were listening to the original sample more and more, we realized that there was actually some other harmonies coming through on the bass. And so after a lot of trial and error, we worked out what those were, flow played those in, and you basically end up with the whole thing. And as much as those harmony basses are super like gentle within it, actually when you take them out, you lose like a charm. So it's really important at that stage to overanalyze. You know, I think for what we were doing, it was just key to the whole song. The whole song is literally that mono sample. So if we weren't overanalyzing, we were going to really miss an element that was really important for the whole record. I then started processing, and I did this kind of as we were going through the recording. I started to just try and process quicker as soon as I could, just so we knew we were on the kind of right path. With the original sample as well, we very clear that even though we were getting this kind of groove, we needed less of the transient to kind of soften it still and make it kind of not feel so, I guess, like modern. So using the SPL here, and you can just hear it just reduces that hit. It makes it kind of mull over a bit more, but it also starts to blend. It starts to blend everything. As well as that, I was then started to take a lot of the bass out. As much as we all love bass, it's not right for the groove of the sample. And here again, you can see it's a lot of kind of big, more sweeping EQs. So I take that out. It just starts to give that character that's really all we're looking for. As well as that, did some multiband stuff. Super subtle. It's just, again, to control that snare. You just don't want it poking out too much. And then that's actually not doing anything. As much as we got that right, and we were, you know, feeling really good at that point, there was just then like an overall sound that we were missing, that just was to give it that kind of finished record feel that you then sampling into a new record. And so what we did is we ended up using a mono compressor limiter over everything, just to really start to tie it all in. And here you can hear it's absolutely slammed. And I think with this, the main thing is we were never really thinking about the technical aspect. Here you've got to use your ear. Here you've got to, like, at this point it's getting Sims's vocal in. It's starting to open up the track more, and you know, hearing how she flows with it.
Simmer, who got the keys to my blood clot bimmer, big time driller, monkey to go.
And like, for instance, I now could open up the compressor and reduce, you know, so it's compressing less, change the threshold, and you'll hear that it starts to change how it feels in the tune.
Big time driller, monkey to gorilla. Who is this woman that I'm seeing in the mirror?
It just doesn't have the same groove. The groove is completely changing. and you start to lose Sim. Sim sounds off against the tune.
Dropping gems with my friends. I got a 3310 and a pack of blems. Then got the gold full black, circle back again.
And you want it to feel like that. At the end of the day, with a hip hop tune like this, it's not about the musical interaction with the vocal in terms of like a performance. The vocals sit on top of the sample, and you want that feeling that the vocal is always in control. And so that was the way that we put that whole thing together.